Welcome all to Owen Sound Waste Watchers, our July 24th, 2021 edition of Talkin' Trash. I'm Lorianne Caswell, and along with Laura Wood, we would like to start today's very special Talkin' Trash Poetry in Motion Zoom session with a land acknowledgement. We want to acknowledge the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe Nation, the people of the Three Fires, known as Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi nations. And further, we give thanks to the Chippewas of Saugeen and the Chippewas of Nawash, now known as the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, as the traditional keepers of this land.
Welcome to our Talking Trash Poetry in Motion event. It all started with a simple act of kindness. A neighbor, Liz Zetlin, dropped off a library book she found interesting for me to read. It was Castaway, Poems for Our Time, written by Naomi Shihab Nye, and contained poetry inspired by Naomi's hobby of picking up trash. The book arrived on a gloomy, wet, gray day in March and was exactly what the doctor ordered to raise my spirits. I was so moved, I got my iPhone and I reached out to Naomi on Facebook with a message of thanks. And to my amazement, she quickly responded, and it started an online conversation that resulted in this event. Naomi is with us today, along with other artists, to share their experiences and words. To begin, I'd like to introduce my friend David Sereda. David is a singer, songwriter, pianist, composer. He's a distinctive voice in music and theater in Canada. David has performed in concerts, festivals across the country, recorded albums of his original songs, written and directed musicals, and is associate artist with the community engaged arts company Theater. David lives in Grey County, close to Georgian Bay. Upon moving to Owen Sound, I was so delighted to discover David lived close by, and I've enjoyed many of his performances in this area. Today, our event will start with David sharing his poetry in song with Pick It Up. Over to you, David.
We're walking, we're clocking, something in the ditch. Dog sniffing, I'm riffing on the things that people pitch. Beer bottle, pop can, and a couple of coffee cups. I should get one of my 100 plastic bags and pick it up. Oh, pick it up, 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 pick it up. I got tunes and I got tales, I got rhythm and rhyme, and a little voice reminding you're running out of time. So pick it up, 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 pick it up. We walk through the graveyard, me and the little pup. Over the stones of the departed is a whisper, is a little whisper. Pick it up, 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 pick it up. Pick it up, pick it up.
Thank you so much. That's amazing, David.
Thank you. It's a world premiere.
Brilliant. That's wonderful. So today we're asking folks about motivation. What motivated you to write Pick It Up?
I write everywhere. So I'm not one of those people that has a particular time and they, a routine. They make their coffee at 6:30 in the morning exactly. They sit down at their desk or open their computer or whatever, and they start to write for precisely 3 hours and have a break, 2 hours and 10 minutes into to go pee or whatever. I'm not like that. But what I do and have been doing certainly faithfully during the pandemic is I go for walks, and often in the morning I go partway into town as my husband Stuart is going to work when he worked at the office, and that's happening again. And he'd let me off with the dog and we would walk home in different kinds of weather. And sometimes it would be up the hill, sometimes it would be along the top. And really this song just kind of unfolded. It's my thinking time, walking. I find it great to kind of ideas that I've maybe been dreaming about the night before or whatever come to the fore, and I allow what I see to kind of mix around with what I've been thinking about, and I respond to it by starting to form phrases. And to remember the phrases, often there's a melody that comes immediately with the phrase. It becomes a little song fragment like, pick it up, pick it up. That's what it was. And literally everything was there. And I love where I live. And when I see a kind of crumpled beer can off the shoulder of the road, it makes me very sad. It reminds me of how not everybody feels that the world is our home. And I think we need to feel that the world is our home. There was a beautiful prayer that I read today, and an excerpt was, and it was a prayer by an Indigenous elder, and it was, may we have compassion, but may we not let our empathy overwhelm us. So this is such a tender time, not only with the pandemic, but what certainly has been happening in this nation now called Canada, with the recovery of and the awareness of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of Indigenous children who were killed or who died under terrible circumstances in these institutions that are known as the residential schools. I think that it's all connected. I think that life is precious, life wants to live, and anything that we can do to encourage life is a win. And whether that's a song, whether that's passing a law, whether that is reaching out to somebody in need, all of that is a way of reaching out and practicing and living that compassion. So it's a long answer. Does that make sense?
Oh, that's a fabulous answer. And thank you so much. You said whether it's a song, whether it's picking up a piece of trash, whether it's writing a poem, I
also think that I like how in this song, it started with picking up a piece of garbage, but it's also just that idea of pick it up, pick up the tempo, or what are you doing with your life?
Yeah.
When are you gonna do that? and I think walks that go through graveyards are very bracing
Exactly.
for the spirit, because you think, oh well, there are people under here who were as alive as we all are. And where are they now? Well, their time is past, unless people remember them. What are you going to do with your time?
Yes.
And that's as I entered my mid-60s, I'm very aware of time. I'm very aware of time and what time do I have left and what do I want to do with it? So pick it up.
Thanks so much, David. That's
Thanks,
wonderful.
Laura.
And thank you for helping to create just the right atmosphere for our event. So now it's my pleasure to introduce our featured speaker, Naomi Shihab Nye. Naomi was named U.S. Young People's Poet Laureate by the Poetry Foundation and is a dedicated trash collector, reuser, and recycler. Naomi was born in St. Louis, Missouri. Her father was a Palestinian refugee and her mother an American of German and Swiss descent. Well, you know what, Naomi, with that heritage, I would say that you're a natural fit to the Canadian mosaic. Honored with many fellowships and awards, Naomi's published work includes a collection that inspired today, as we've mentioned, Castaway Poems for Our Time. Naomi lives in Texas, where she is joining us today. Welcome to Owen Sound, Naomi.
Thank you so much, Laura. And it's such a great honor to be part of your gathering today. David, the song was just terrific. I love it. And I'm going to have your voice pick it up in my ear every day when I do just that. I am so touched to be connected to Canada in any way as ever. I lived in Nova Scotia 2 summers when I was very young, and I think it marked me. I just fell in love with Canada, traveling by train and bus around in different provinces. And when you contacted me, I was so excited that here we were, seemingly far away, but joined and connected, as David beautifully said, by this activity and this desire to improve things wherever we are. I too think a lot about time and how we use our time and ways of improving that are manageable and human-sized, where we don't just sit in place and fret and feel horrible about all the bad things happening in the world, of which there are aplenty. But we do little activities that help us feel as if we have contributed. And I do think there's a positive contagion that comes through those. This morning, I was so excited on my morning trash walk, just feeling as if our community extended, far north. I'm in the south of Texas. I live in the inner city of a very old city, San Antonio, which is the indigenous home of so many different people. And we live near a small river and a creek system that go throughout the entire downtown. We have very large old trees. The houses are very old. And the trash keeps showing up. And I feel every day that by going out with my little kit, my bag, my glove, my tongs, and different lengths of tongs, that I am committing an act of love for the neighborhood, that I am improving every little block. It's a wonderful feeling to walk home and not pass any more trash. It's all picked up, it's all in the bag. I am very touched to know that you have poets writing about this, working for the Owen Sound Waste Watchers group and being part of the whole endeavor, because to me, it is such a great time to think about phrases, as David said. Language comes to us, clarity comes to us. Many times our minds are just as cluttered as our street sides or ditches become. And I find that picking up trash is a very uplifting, positive move part of the day. And I always feel better when I come home after doing it, no matter how much there was, how little there was, if it started raining in the middle, if I need to go back with a bigger bag, I still feel better. And I have clearer thoughts after doing it. And I also find that I'm not just thinking about trash, I'm thinking about time, as David said, and how each of us has a tiny, tiny part to play in this huge, glorious, I love the word mosaic, which you used to describe Canada, and I could also use to describe Texas. We're all part of an effort together, a world community. And I was surprised when my beloved editor, her name is Virginia Duncan, suggested to me that I think of taking this lifelong devotion ritual and writing a whole book of poems about it. She said, surely in your notebooks you comment on it sometimes. And I said, well, I do. I sometimes talk about what I found or what I thought of while I was out on the walk, and she said, why don't you consider this a whole book on the topic? So that's how the book was born. And of course, it managed, in the funny way of things, to be printed and published right at the moment that everyone retreated into their homes and didn't want to touch anything anymore, especially something that had belonged to someone else. Because in those early days, we weren't even sure how the virus was traveling. And so I took a little bit of time off from the task, but I couldn't wait to get back to it. I really missed being out there. And one thing I thought this morning was how people always talk to me when I'm picking up trash. People I don't know, strangers passing, someone on a bicycle, someone on a scooter, they call out a greeting. Usually it's friendly talk, and sometimes people will thank me, and I'm certainly not doing it for thanks. And sometimes people will say very interesting things also. So it's sort of a way of being in the world, being invisible, doing something simple and meaningful, but also being connected.
It reminds me, Naomi, of we had some people picking up stuff in Owen Sound last 2 summers ago at the, I think it's the street sale or something in July. And one of our newer volunteers at that point was picking up, and a little girl came over and hugged her. And she was really taken back. And I know a lot of us who pick up trash in the neighborhood get thanks. And we don't do it for the thanks, but it's lovely.
Yes, and that's right. We don't do it for the thanks, but somehow it's just that feeling of hoping and helping. And this is a topic that kids write about extremely well. I worked with some kids, a lot of kids this past year due to my post through the Poetry Foundation, and kids were doing it in their own rooms at home. They were doing it just in front of their own houses or at their apartment complexes. Kids who were physically in school were doing it only in their schoolyards and in the hallways. And there was a lot of talk about all the many ways there are to help with collection of this kind. And, I usually find that I come home and I just feel clearer about my life, about what I want to do next. It's like when people say they go exercise, well, this is exercise. But I feel as if some of the cluttery thoughts or the trash talk that may be filtering through my mind has been calmed, released, and I have better thoughts about what to do next.
Now, you've answered some of the questions I was going to ask you already, but the main question is, what motivated you to start picking up trash, and when was that?
Well, it was as a child. I lived in Ferguson, a community part of St. Louis that has now become infamous for sad things, the racial divide, but Ferguson was also a very historic and a beautiful old community, simple, modest, middle-class community. And I walked to school every day, back and forth for 7 years. And in going on this route, and sometimes I would vary the route a little bit, I would notice when there was something in the street and it would bother me. So I used to save, at first I started just saving my paper lunch sack so I could collect things on the way home. But then I realized I should take larger sacks because there was more stuff. And so it was just a habit. I would do it, especially coming home, things I had often seen in the morning. And I would feel very curious about who dropped them. And I still feel that. Why did those particular things get dropped? So many food wrappings, but often other oddities. And you think, just a curiosity, almost a detective curiosity about the collective soul and psychology of everybody. And as a child, my parents used to call me a detective, and my husband does now, that I always was curious, like who lives in every house? What are they doing in there? What are their jobs? What do they eat? And if you picked up trash, that was a way to find out more information. So I felt extremely intimate with my neighborhood through doing that. And it never seemed to me like a dirty or nasty habit. It seemed like an upbeat, positive habit. And I heard someone mention Girl Guides a little while ago. I was a Girl Scout, and I think the Girl Scouts had some sort of commitment to trying to clean up our environment, even in those long ago days. So I just never stopped. And I was the cleanup person in my family home as well. I was the one person in the family who loved doing dishes and cleaning the kitchen every night, and I still do. So there was kind of just a motivation to do that wherever I was. Now, Laura, I have had really interesting times doing it in other countries. Like one summer I spent 6 weeks in Berlin, and there was a beautiful little pocket park I walked through every evening at sundown. Mostly elders and their dogs were in this little park. But I became so acutely aware of how much trash there was that I just decided, that's it. I have to get to work here. Even though this isn't, my home city, I can help it out. And that was a really fascinating endeavor. And definitely, I think I felt more connected with the Berlin community at the time I left than I would have otherwise.
I love that. I love when you're saying that you feel more connected with your community by picking up trash that someone else may have dropped. I think often when we start picking up trash, we're constantly asking the question, how could they do this?
Yeah.
Those bad people, why are they doing this? As opposed to thinking, who are they? Why did this happen? We had an interesting experience when we first began Owen Sound Waste Watchers. We did a pickup at the harbor, and we had a bunch of people picking up, and we were finding clothing.
Yeah.
None of the people in our group realized that that was an area where some of the Owen Sound homeless people took refuge at night. And it educated us to leave certain stuff because that was their home, I'm sorry to say. But it never even dawned on me, occasionally you find one sock. It's like, why is there a sock out in the middle of the road? Well, there's a story of this, of the sock, right? Yes. I still don't know what the story is, and I'm not sure I want to know the story behind all of the floss containers that I'm picking up everywhere. I can't imagine flossing my teeth in the middle of the street, but we seem to find them. But perhaps connecting with those folks as well would be interesting. I'm going to ask you a final question before we ask you to read some of your poetry, and that is, can you tell us what you think is the most unusual item that you have picked up on your journeys?
Well, my favorite item is the item that actually appears on the back of the book, which is a little hand-stitched mitten, a child's mitten. And we don't see a lot of mittens in Texas, by the way. I'm sure you have a lot more of them in Canada than we have. So that in itself is unusual. But stitched into the back of it, hand-stitched, was the word heroes. And because children are my heroes, I felt so moved by this, and I almost didn't pick it up because I thought maybe someone will come back looking for it. But it was so muddy and covered with leaves that I thought, no, it's been here a long time. I'm picking it up. And I washed it and actually gave it as a gift to my editor because she'd had the idea for my doing this whole book, and then put the little poem on the back. Nothing a child ever does is trash. It is practice. So for me, that was one of the dearest discoveries for all the heroes, the children. And I think children, when they're very little, they're confounded by why would a grown-up do this? Why would an adult throw something down on the ground? Because they're learning very early on to put things in their places. But of course, I've found many other odd and unusual things. I once found a plastic bucket that was so lovely. I think we kept it in our family for about 6 years, and our son used to play with it on beaches. And I also found like 6 full meals in styrofoam boxes. This reminds me of your clothes, lined up on a bench one day. And when I flipped open the first one and I saw that it was not someone's leftover food, it was a full meal. I did not take those. I didn't touch them because I thought they're hoping that someone who's very hungry will come along and find these meals. And that's quite touching. One day I did find 10 brand new unused deodorants, and that seemed mysterious. I couldn't imagine, like, had they fallen off a truck? And I think I didn't take those either because I thought someone might need them and they looked brand new.
Yes.
So sometimes you do have to make those decisions on the spot. Should I just push this to the side?
Yes.
But I think we're all part of this harmony, this rhythm, this connectedness. I just can't stop thinking of David's beautiful song, where we want to be in tandem with one another. We want to be helping. And so I just want to thank you all before I read my quick poems for the great work you're doing and the encouragement to others. And I'm telling people about you so they'll look you up and watch your videos and what you have posted. And I was very touched by your seven points of positive action and reduce, reuse, repair, all of the ways you just start thinking about, well, I could darn that sock. I don't have to throw it out. I mean, it affects everything.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you. So yes, we'd love to hear a little bit of your work.
At the bus stop, titters and tatters, ripped bag tops, faded receipts, outdated transfers, tucked among blossoming tendrils. What we make, what the earth makes. You need a whole new collection bag for bus stops. People spend a lot of messy time on these benches. I envy Canadians, their ability to avoid us when they want to. Hold on, North Star. How gloomy we Americans are these days, lost in conflict, lonesome for pride, hunched up beside sacks that once held chips. Crushed cup. In the street in front of our house seems 100 years old, but it wasn't here when I went to bed last night. How does something become old so quickly? Refreshing ourselves means sleeping well, thinking better thoughts, drinking from morning lifted to our lips, that slim pink strip of light so quickly merging yellow, saying, this tastes like a hopeful note, brave beverage, something better we could be together. And I'll just read this last one for you, Laura and Lorianne, and also for Richard Eve. I'm so excited to hear you speak in a moment. Trash is a ticket to nowhere. It says, I do not care about you. Poof. You can pick me up if you want to. The person who dropped me was more important than the person who picks me up. What? Make our smallest moves the right ones. On a San Antonio street called Dallas, the corner of Baltimore, all of us connected, like it or not. If we're alive, isn't it all ours? Even the street called Cary Grant, bent wire, styrofoam, snaps. Here's the rim of a pizza box from the Mesozoic era. Trash says, disregard, disregard. Thank you all so much, Owen Sound Waste Watchers, for regarding, not disregarding. I honor you, I respect you, and I will be thinking about you for a long, long time.
Thank you so much for sharing your passion and for sharing your work with us today. So next up, we're pleased to welcome Richard Yves Sitoski, Owen Sound's current Poet Laureate. Richard is community ambassador and works to bring poetry to our city. It's been difficult during a pandemic, but Richard continues to interpret and bring local concerns to the fore as subject matter for his poems. His specific term mandate is to view these concerns through an environmental lens. So Richard has participated in Owen Sound Waste Watcher activities alone and with his teenage son. And we're so happy to welcome Richard to our event today to present a poem. Welcome, Richard.
Oh, thanks, Laura and Lorianne. Oh, it was great to hear you, Naomi and David. This is just a wonderful event you guys have been putting on today. So what we've got here is, I like long titles to my poems. So this poem title is about as long as some of the poems I've written. And it has to do with the 1970s, and I could address that maybe a little bit later. Anatomy of the ditch and soft shoulder of Round Lake Road between the Sherwood River and the village of Bonnechere, township of Laurentian Valley, Renfrew County, Ontario, throughout the summer of 1977. Queen Anne's lace, finery around her neck, yet at her feet, a not quite carrot fit for a hermit's bowl. The glint of something silver, maybe a down satellite, maybe a Hostess salt and vinegar chips package. Pull tabs in the aggregate like crashed planes in the mountains. Molson stubbies between the devil's paintbrushes. Well, what was the devil painting if not himself drinking beer? Daisies, never to feel the sting of lovers pulling their petals off to prove that love is only love when something beautiful is frittered by degrees. Mullen, tough enough to earn a proverb's chevrons. Inner tubes, even tougher, lengths of intestine from some ill-tempered ruminant. The deer crossing sign, buckshot in some Lescaut era act of sympathetic magic. Ditch lilies waiting to lend their name to a bar band. Dandelions with puffs of geriatric hair, grannies waiting to board the casino bus. Timothy stalks playing hockey with bottle caps. A dead ballpoint, a dead spark plug, a dead hair barrette. Cigarette butts like spent shell casings from an epidemic of gun mishaps. Black-eyed Susans like the daisy's hippie aunts. Bumblebees with their craftsman's unhurried industry. Monarchs like Frida Kahlo's jewelry come to life. Pieces of pink quartz as valuable to an 8-year-old as a ruby crystal shooter, a heron feather, a Star Wars card, a porcupine's quill. A rusted motor oil can like a tin of peaches from the Erebus. A bicycle like a vulture scavenged calf. Fragments of headlights from the impact between modernity and John Muir's notebooks. Fragments of taillights like the drops Queen Anne shed from her pricked finger. Drops that land on gravel and turn it red. Red as a setting sun that hasn't yet decided if it will rise on the morrow.
Thank you so much, Richard. And what our future viewers will not see in the recording is the participants' reaction to it, the silent claps that we've all got to know on Zoom. So thank you so much,
Thanks.
Richard. I appreciate so much your sharing. So as mentioned earlier, our question to folks today is centers around the word motivation. So what motivates you to care about trash?
Well, I'll tell you, like flat out, it's my son. We have bequeathed to him and his generation a world that is pretty messed up in so many ways. And one of the worst ways is what we've done to the world environmentally. And his generation is going to have to pick up the pieces. And I'm not going to say that I despair for his generation, but I fear for it. And every little thing that we can do to mitigate what he's going to have to worry about and what that generation is going to have to worry about it's essential that we undertake to clear the air, to get those scrubbers going on those smokestacks, to pick up as much trash as we possibly can. Because one of the things that we found out is that you can't rely on municipal governments, provincial governments, federal governments, state governments to do this kind of work. You live in a community, and your responsibility is towards that community. And grassroots movements like this are absolutely vital, because these are the people that are going to get this stuff done. Okay, I'm not going to talk about the problems that Owen Sound has had with, some of its contracting and things like that, and its procurement. I don't want to go there. But all this just to say that really we only have ourselves to look towards to get these kinds of things done.
That's very true. Thank you, Richard. The Owen Sound Waste Watchers really talks about, one person, one action at the time. And in various points in the past, we've been more and less involved with influencing who we would say are folks who run the city at City Hall. And usually we need to clear our palate afterwards and go and pick up some trash. But I will say that one of the effective things that happened was one day when they were in the midst of developing the new river front area, walking into City Hall with a TerraCycle recycling bin and saying, will you put these up in the city? And there was a lot of questions about whether they would be able to do that. And I looked down and they had on the counter the plans for that area. And I said, how about here? And we handed them one. And so they took that one. They never gave it back. So I like to pretend every time I see one that that's the one that our group provided. And then they ordered 9 more. And then they ordered 20 more. And those are TerraCycle containers where the butts will be recycled through TerraCycle. So, there are ways to work with, influence our local community and government groups. It takes a lot of time, so much faster to go out and pick up a piece of trash ourselves. So thank you. And thank you so much for sharing your work with us today, Richard Yves. And we look forward to hearing more from you in the future. Our next local poet is Liz Zetlin, but I just wanted to let you know that Liz so wanted to join us today, but life happens and it wasn't possible. This event was pretty important to Liz, and heck, her kind act really put it into action. So even though she couldn't be with us physically, she wanted to let us know that she's with us in spirit. So as we've been planning this event, Laureate Caswell has been speaking with Liz about her poetry, her process, and what motivates her. So Liz has now asked Laureate to step in for her and share the poem. Laureate, thanks so much for ensuring that Liz can still be part of our event today.
Well, thank you, Laura. It's a privilege. In fact, I can actually say it's an honor to represent Liz. She's an absolute treasure and an inspiration to me and to many, many others in so many ways. And I'm really humbled to be speaking her words. For this occasion today, she wrote a haibum, soft fascination. Walking in old growth forest, the brain on nature. Maple keys surf the breeze. Peonies release their petals. The Massasauga sheds her skin. Mourning doves molt worn feathers. Why don't such cast-offs cover the planet in sky-high piles of garbage? Because nature's waste is not wasted, but becomes food. Nature doesn't have a design problem. People do. Younger than me, cheap plastic water bottles, 1 million a minute.
Thank you, Laureate, for sharing Liz's poem with us today. You had the opportunity to talk with Liz about her advocacy. What motivated her to get involved with issues like protecting water and the environment?
Well, putting words in her mouth, I guess. For Liz, it really started in her childhood, growing up with water in her backyard where she could boat out to the Chesapeake Bay and even the Atlantic Ocean. She wouldn't have called it private sacred space as she does now. A child probably wouldn't. For most of her life, Liz has lived on or near water as she does now, her backyard along the Sydenham River in Owen Sound. The catalyst for her action was doing something, was going on the Saugeen First Nations water walk several years ago. She had already received permission to film what they were doing, to make a video about the 17-kilometer walk. Liz was so moved by the reverence, the respect these First Nations women had for the water. The women are the keepers of the water. And so she made her film, Keepers of the Water, and it's her most viewed film. It has literally gone around the world. To Liz, water is life, and water must be protected, viewing it how First Nations respect it. Her motivation overall is really simple and straightforward. We've heard about that this afternoon. She says, and I quote, "I love nature and nature needs our love." Such a simple but really potent message. This matters when she considers the world she's living for her children and her grandchildren, another theme of today. And quite frankly, what motivation could we have that would be better than that?
Well, thank you so much, Laureate, for sharing Liz's work. And I'd like to thank all of our panelists. Naomi, we are so delighted that you could spend some time with us today here in Canada. The pandemic has shown us that we can communicate differently. This Zoom session has allowed us to chat with you in person and hear your amazing work read live. We hope someday in the future we can meet in person and continue this conversation. Maybe pick up some pieces of trash together. Wouldn't that be fun? David, Richard, and Liz through Laureate, you've made this event even more special as we highlight the poetry and the people who are passionate about our area. So it's been a wonderful event. We encourage everyone to consider expressing their thoughts and dreams about the environment in a way that works for you. As a thank you to Naomi, Richard, Liz, and David, Owen Sound Waste Watcher is donating a copy. You'll see a pile of books here of Naomi's books, book Castaway Poems for Our Time, to middle schools here in Owen Sound. If you'd like more information about how to respond creatively, Naomi has shared several ideas in the back of this book about how you can do just that. And it can be as simple and easy as writing a letter to a piece of trash that you pick up. Stay tuned for more information about future Owen Sound Waste Watchers activities posted on our social media and our website, oswastewatchers.ca. Thanks so much for joining us. Until next time, please keep making a difference, one person, one action at a time.